My beloved child, before you scroll away, listen carefully, because this message is not really about how you look in the mirror, it is about the way your soulmate sees you when nobody else is watching. There is something strangely personal hidden behind this situation, and the more you listen, the more you may understand why your soulmate has recently become so quiet, so observant, or so difficult to read. Someone has been talking about you, but not in the simple way you might imagine. They have been describing you through their own perspective, turning small observations into a story that was never theirs to tell. And the part your soulmate cannot ignore is this: they know the difference between the version of you that the world sees and the version of you they have come to recognize. They remember the little things you probably never thought anyone noticed, the way your expression changes when you are comfortable, the way your energy shifts when you are nervous, the way you carry yourself after a difficult day, even the way you sometimes look at yourself and become far more critical than you deserve to be. Your soulmate has noticed these things because their attention toward you was never ordinary. But recently, something reached their ears. Someone said something about your appearance that sounded harmless on the surface, yet your soulmate immediately sensed that there was something underneath it. It was not really about your body. It was about perception. It was about someone trying to define you with a label that does not belong to them. And what makes this so emotional is that your soulmate may have realized, perhaps for the first time, how deeply they actually care about protecting the truth of who you are. They may not have confronted anyone. They may not have said a single word. But inside, something changed. Because when someone truly sees you, they do not reduce you to a shape, a feature, a photograph, or somebody else's opinion. They remember the entire person. And your soulmate remembers you differently. Here is where the story becomes much more interesting, because the person spreading this impression may not even realize what they have revealed about themselves. Every time they describe you, they are actually exposing the way they think. They may say you look like someone you are not, compare your appearance to an image they created in their mind, or exaggerate something simply because they want other people to notice it. But your soulmate hears the hidden message. They understand that the description says more about the speaker than it says about you. And this is precisely why your soulmate has been thinking so much about you. They have begun asking themselves a question they cannot easily answer: why does this bother me so much? That question is important. Because perhaps they once believed their feelings for you were manageable. Perhaps they told themselves they could stay distant, stay casual, or simply watch everything from a safe distance. But hearing someone else talk about you forced them to confront something they had been avoiding. They realized that when another person misunderstands you, they feel the urge to correct them. When someone judges you unfairly, they feel uncomfortable. When someone turns your appearance into gossip, their heart becomes strangely protective. And that reaction does not come from indifference. It comes from attachment. Your soulmate may remember moments when you questioned your own appearance, moments when you compared yourself with other people, moments when you wondered whether you were enough. They may remember those moments more clearly than you realize. That is why the words of this other person hit differently. Because your soulmate knows that you are not simply what someone sees in a passing glance. They know the person behind the appearance. They know the version of you that laughs when you are genuinely happy. They know the version that becomes quiet when something matters deeply. They know the version that tries to look strong even when uncertainty is sitting quietly inside. And somewhere in their heart, they may be realizing that they do not want someone else's description to become the story attached to your name. But wait, because there is another layer to this that you probably did not expect. The person who has been talking may have unknowingly reminded your soulmate of a moment from the past. A moment when your soulmate looked at you differently. Maybe it was a photograph. Maybe it was a brief encounter. Maybe it was a simple conversation where you did not realize they were paying attention to every detail. Your soulmate remembers something about you that is difficult to explain logically. Not one physical feature. Not one perfect image. Something much deeper, the overall feeling of seeing you. And that memory has stayed with them. So when somebody recently described you in a completely different way, your soulmate's mind immediately returned to that memory. They compared the two versions and realized something powerful. The world has one picture of you, but they have another. That realization can shake someone emotionally because it reveals how personal their connection has become. They may suddenly understand why certain photographs of you affect them differently, why your name catches their attention even when they pretend it does not, why they remember details about you that they have no reason to remember. And there is something else they may have discovered. You have been far harder to forget than they expected. Time may have passed. Conversations may have become less frequent. Circumstances may have changed. Yet somehow, the smallest reminder can bring you back into their thoughts with incredible clarity. That is why this recent conversation matters. It did not create their feelings. It exposed them. Someone else's words simply pressed against a part of your soulmate's heart that had been quiet for too long. Suddenly they were thinking about your face, your presence, your expressions, your confidence, your insecurities, and all those tiny details that make you unmistakably yourself. And the more they thought about it, the more uncomfortable one truth became: they do not want other people deciding who you are. And now comes the part you should remember, because the next revelation changes the meaning of everything that happened before it. Your soulmate may not be upset because someone said you look a certain way. They may be upset because someone spoke about you as if they had the right to define you. There is a difference. When someone genuinely cares about you, they eventually stop seeing you through categories. They start seeing your contradictions, your softness, your strength, your imperfections, your growth, and the things you hide from almost everyone else. Your soulmate may have reached that point without even realizing it. They are no longer looking at an image of you. They are remembering a person. And that is why their silence may actually be carrying more emotion than their words. They could be replaying the conversation in their mind, wondering whether they should tell you what they heard. They could be asking themselves whether you already know. They could even be wondering whether you would believe them if they finally admitted how differently they see you. Because there is one thing they have not said yet: the version of you they carry in their heart does not match the version other people are talking about. Not even close. And before this story is over, you are going to understand why that difference matters so much to your soulmate. Because sometimes a person does not realize how deeply they feel until somebody else tries to describe the person they secretly cannot stop caring about. Your soulmate may have just reached that moment. They may have heard your name, heard the description, gone completely quiet, and then realized that what they wanted to say was not about your appearance at all. It was about you. The real you. And that realization is only the beginning. There is something your soulmate has not told you yet, and this is where the entire situation begins to feel much more personal. After hearing what was said about you, they did not simply forget it and move on. They started comparing the words with everything they already knew about you. One sentence kept returning to their mind, because it sounded completely different from the person they remembered. They may have wondered, how can someone look at this person and only see that? And that question opened a door they had been keeping closed. Your soulmate began remembering the moments when your appearance was never the thing that mattered most. They remembered your energy when you entered a room. They remembered the expression on your face when you were genuinely excited about something. They remembered the moments when you were completely unaware that anyone was watching you. Those are the moments that stayed with them. And suddenly, they understood something they had been trying not to admit: their attraction to you was never based on one physical detail. It was the entire presence of you. The way you exist. The way you make an ordinary moment feel different. The way your silence can sometimes say more than a conversation. The way your smile can change the atmosphere without you even trying. That is why the comment affected them so deeply. Someone tried to reduce you to a description, while your soulmate had already connected that description to a much bigger emotional memory. They could not accept the idea that other people were now discussing you as if they knew you better than they did. And perhaps the strangest part is that your soulmate may have realized they have been paying attention to you for much longer than they ever admitted. They remember details you probably assumed nobody noticed. They remember changes in your style, your expressions, your confidence, even the moments when you seemed to withdraw into yourself. They noticed when something was different. They noticed when you looked happier. They noticed when you looked tired. They noticed when you were trying to hide what you were feeling. And now they are asking themselves why they have noticed so much if you were supposed to be someone they could simply forget. But the real revelation is not about what someone said. It is about what your soulmate did immediately afterward. They became curious. They wanted to see you again, even if only through an old photograph or a memory saved somewhere in their mind. They wanted to compare the image in front of them with the description they had just heard. And when they did, something unexpected happened. Instead of noticing the things that other person had mentioned, they noticed everything that made you uniquely you. That was the moment their perspective shifted. They realized they were no longer looking at you with casual interest. They were looking at you through emotion. Every small detail suddenly carried a memory. A certain expression reminded them of a conversation. A certain smile reminded them of a moment they had never forgotten. Even the way you carry yourself reminded them of the strength they once saw in you. This is why your soulmate may be struggling to explain their feelings right now. They cannot simply say, "I like the way you look." That would be far too small. What they are feeling is connected to memory, familiarity, curiosity, admiration, and something much harder to put into words. And there is another person in this story who may have noticed that reaction. Someone may have watched your soulmate become unusually quiet when your name came up. Someone may have noticed the change in their expression. Someone may have realized that your soulmate did not laugh along or join the conversation the way they expected. That silence may have revealed more than any confession could have. Because when someone genuinely cares, sometimes their first reaction is not a dramatic speech. Sometimes it is simply the inability to pretend that they do not care anymore. And now, listen closely to this next part, because this is where the person talking about you may have accidentally exposed the real reason behind their behavior. They may have been trying to get attention. They may have wanted your soulmate to react. They may have assumed that discussing your appearance would create distance between you and your soulmate. But instead, it created the opposite effect. It forced your soulmate to think about you. It reminded them of you. It made them question why your name still carries emotional weight. The person who started the conversation may have thought they were controlling the story, but they could not control what happened inside your soulmate's mind afterward. Your soulmate began revisiting old memories. They began wondering what you are doing now. They began imagining what it would feel like to see you again after everything that has happened. And somewhere beneath all those thoughts was a realization they could no longer dismiss: they never truly stopped caring. Maybe they tried to convince themselves that enough time had passed. Maybe they told themselves that the connection was simply a memory. But one conversation brought everything back to the surface. That is why this situation is so powerful. Sometimes you do not discover what someone means to you when everything is peaceful. You discover it when somebody else says something that makes you suddenly realize how protective you feel. Your soulmate may have discovered that their feelings are stronger than their pride. Stronger than their silence. Stronger than the distance they created. And the person who was talking about you may have unknowingly pushed them toward a decision they had been avoiding for a long time. There is one final detail you need to understand before this chapter moves forward. Your soulmate is not only thinking about how other people see you. They are thinking about how you see yourself. That may be what concerns them most. They may wonder whether those words could reach you and make you question yourself. They may wonder whether you have ever looked in the mirror and believed the wrong voice. Because from their perspective, there is something about you that other people cannot measure. They see the way you have changed. They see the confidence you are slowly building. They see qualities you may still overlook in yourself. And this has created an emotional conflict inside them. Part of them wants to remain silent because speaking honestly would expose how much they care. Another part of them wants to tell you that you have been seeing yourself through the wrong lens. They want you to know that the person they remember is not the person described by gossip, comparison, or careless opinions. They remember someone more complicated, more beautiful in character, and far more unforgettable than a simple description could ever capture. And now your soulmate may be standing at a crossroads emotionally. They can continue pretending that your name means nothing to them, or they can finally acknowledge why hearing about you affects them so deeply. The next time your name comes up, their reaction may be impossible to hide. Because what began as a conversation about your appearance has turned into something much bigger, a confrontation with feelings they thought they had already moved beyond. And somewhere inside that realization is the truth they have been avoiding: the person everyone else is trying to describe is not the person they fell for. They fell for the person behind the description. And that is exactly why this story is not finished. My beloved child, something has shifted inside your soulmate since that conversation, and they are beginning to understand why they could never completely erase you from their thoughts. At first, they tried to treat the entire situation as meaningless. They told themselves that people talk, people make assumptions, and eventually every conversation disappears. But this one did not disappear. It stayed. It followed them into quiet moments. It returned when they were alone. And every time they remembered what had been said about you, their mind immediately replaced that description with their own memory of you. That is when they realized the problem was never your appearance. The problem was that someone else had tried to define a person they did not truly understand. Your soulmate knows there is a difference between looking at someone and actually seeing them. They have seen the side of you that does not appear in photographs. They remember the way you react when you care deeply about something. They remember your little habits, your expressions, your energy, and even the moments when you become completely lost in your own thoughts. Those details have become connected to you in their mind, and nobody else's opinion can erase them. But something even more unexpected happened. Your soulmate began wondering whether you have any idea how they actually see you. They started imagining what would happen if you could hear their private thoughts for just 1 minute. Would you be surprised? Would you smile? Would you finally understand why they sometimes become quiet around you? Because there are feelings they have never expressed properly, and this recent situation has made those feelings impossible to ignore. Then came the moment your soulmate realized that the person talking about you may have misunderstood something important. They assumed that your appearance was the reason your soulmate noticed you. But your soulmate knows it was never that simple. What first caught their attention may have been something physical, but what kept their attention was everything else. Your personality. Your presence. Your emotional depth. The way you could be confident one day and surprisingly vulnerable the next. The way you could make people laugh without trying too hard. The way you could become quiet when something touched a sensitive part of your heart. Those contradictions made you memorable. And that is why the label someone tried to place on you felt so incomplete. Your soulmate may have even caught themselves defending you mentally, thinking of all the things they wish they could say. They may have wanted to explain that you cannot be summarized by one feature, one photograph, one opinion, or one comparison. You are a complete person, and that is exactly how they have come to see you. But there is another reason this matters. Your soulmate has started questioning the motives behind the conversation. Why did that person bring you up? Why did they describe you that way? Why were they so interested in your appearance? And most importantly, why did they seem so interested in knowing your soulmate's reaction? Those questions have created suspicion, not fear, but curiosity. Your soulmate is beginning to recognize that the conversation may have had a purpose. Maybe someone wanted information. Maybe someone wanted attention. Maybe someone wanted to test how your soulmate would react when your name entered the conversation. And without realizing it, they may have revealed exactly what they wanted to know. But here is the part that makes this story even more emotional. Your soulmate's reaction may have surprised even them. They expected themselves to remain neutral. Instead, they became protective of your dignity. They did not want to participate in a conversation that reduced you to an appearance. They wanted to change the subject. They wanted the conversation to end. And afterward, they kept thinking about why their reaction was so strong. That question brought them face to face with a truth they had been avoiding. You still matter to them. Perhaps more than they wanted to admit. Because if you truly meant nothing, someone else's description would have been easy to ignore. Yet they could not ignore it. They could not simply laugh and move on. They could not stop remembering you. And while they were thinking about you, they began remembering another side of your story, the moments when you were not trying to impress anyone, the moments when you were simply yourself. Those moments may be the ones your soulmate values most. Not the carefully chosen photographs. Not the perfect presentation. Not the version of yourself you show when you feel confident. They remember the real, unfiltered moments. And strangely enough, those are the moments they find hardest to forget. Maybe that is why they have been looking at old memories again. Maybe that is why they have been wondering what you look like now. Maybe that is why they have been tempted to search for some sign that you have moved forward. Because beneath their curiosity is something deeper. They want to know whether there is still a place in your world for the person who has been quietly carrying memories of you. And now the biggest realization begins to surface. Your soulmate may have finally understood that what they feel for you cannot be explained by appearance alone. They are drawn to the person you are when nobody is performing for anyone. They are drawn to your authenticity. They are drawn to the emotional impression you leave behind. They may have tried to distance themselves because admitting this connection would make them vulnerable, but this recent conversation exposed the weakness in that strategy. They can avoid speaking to you, but they cannot control what happens when someone else speaks about you. They can act unaffected, but their memories continue to respond. They can pretend they have moved on, but one unexpected mention of you can bring an entire chapter of their emotions back into focus. And perhaps that is the most important revelation of all. Someone tried to tell a story about how you look, but your soulmate was reminded of how you feel to them. There is a massive difference. One is an opinion. The other is an emotional memory. One can change from person to person. The other has been building quietly over time. Your soulmate may not be ready to confess everything yet, but their perspective has changed. They are beginning to see that the connection between you was never as superficial as they once tried to convince themselves. And the person who started this conversation may have accidentally opened a door that your soulmate had kept locked for a very long time. Behind that door are memories, questions, regret, curiosity, and one truth they can no longer push away. No matter how many different descriptions other people create about you, your soulmate still remembers the version of you that touched something inside them. And soon, they may have to decide whether they are finally ready to let